So, Brad, I got to ask you, we just recorded the Drunk History, the Drunk ComicLab episode on Saturday. And I remember you having more than your fair share of Jim Beam, and I had 4 shots of straight tequila and then a very large IKEA tumbler of margarita. And I want to ask you, because I have my own reaction, how did you feel the next day?
Oh, I'm going to tell you, Sunday morning was rough. Well, I mean, I was as hungover as I've been or more in well over 10 years. I cannot remember being this sick after a night of revelry in over 10 years. I mean, I don't even think I was this bad after my bachelor party. I was ill, and my older son was running the 10-mile Broad Street run here in the city. And we, luckily my wife got up and got him down like at 5 o'clock in the morning to where he needed to be to start. But we still needed to be at the 5-mile mark and at the finish line to cheer him on. And I'd made a sign and all this stuff. And just getting there was monumental in effort. It was really I didn't feel myself until a good 6 o'clock in the evening. And that was after we got him home from the run. And I just laid down on the couch and didn't move for several hours.
Yeah. I think we had the shocking awareness that we're no longer 22. It was very clear to me that my body's like, no, you can't do this anymore. I don't think you understand.
Well, and not only that, but it was just one of those things that as it evolved, it was just one bad decision on my part after another. You had told me that you had already had a couple of shots of tequila to get started. And so I went downstairs and I had a couple of shots of Jim Beam that I usually keep around because bourbon is a better mix for whiskey sours. So I keep that around for whiskey sours and mixed drinks and stuff like that. And then you did that video, which we're going to post exclusively on Patreon, a tequila shot. And you said, "Oh, Brad, you should do a video too." So dutifully, I went downstairs and recorded myself doing a whiskey shot. Now, within a very short time, I've had 3 whiskey shots, and it's time to record. So I go upstairs and pour a big tumbler full of Lafroig, probably a 1/5 of a bottle, a 1/6 of a bottle, and polish that off in the first hour easy. And at this point, and like I was explaining last night, we were talking about it with my in-laws, and it's like the problem is that I was podcasting, I was talking, I wasn't paying any attention to anything else. So you are absent-mindedly sipping and sipping and sipping, and then when the glass is empty, you fill it up, and you're not paying any attention. And when I filled that second glass up with, I was out of Lafroig, so I drank some Lagavulin, which a friend had gifted to me, and it's very nice. I don't like it as much as Lafroig, but it's a very nice scotch. But I wasn't paying any attention on how full I filled that glass, and it was way fuller than the first glass that I'd had. So at the end, not only had I had way too much whiskey and scotch, but I had mixed 3 different alcohols in that time, which, as anybody worth their salt knows, that you don't mix alcohols.
Yeah, well, listen, my whole night was just a compounding error of an old man trying to recreate what he used to do when he was 21 and in college. We had a whole big family day that day. We were going to record. We recorded at night. Everybody was safe. No big deal.
Yeah.
We recorded at night, and I had a big family day. And about 10 minutes before we were about to record, I looked at my wife and went, "Oh no, I haven't had anything to drink all day." And she goes, "Why do you need to drink?" I go, "Oh, Brad and I are recording a Drunk ComicLab tonight." And oh boy. And so I was going to quietly, casually, slowly ease into it with very delightful mojitos, really pleasant, very sugary drinks.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I realized I have 10 minutes to get really drunk. And my mind flashed back to the last time that, you need to get real drunk real fast. And it was college. And I was like, what did I used to do? Shots of tequila. That'll do it. So I went and got the sipping tequila, of which, boy, what a lie that word is, sipping.
No such thing as a sipping tequila.
And it's like powering down paint thinner, and I was immediately transported back to how much I disliked tequila in college. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh God. And then as we're going, you're in trouble when you're drinking tequila, and you're like, oh, this is starting to taste good. And that's when I knew, oh no, it's hooked me now. This is trouble. Like I'm in bad. But then waking up the next day, oh God,
Well,
I
you know how people say I had my head in a vice? It actually felt like something was squeezing inwards on my temples. Like
yeah.
I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, just feeling like an immense pressure on my temples.
What's funny for me is because of this is more information than anybody wants to know. I had what's known as a ptotic kidney because in high school I played football and I took a helmet to my kidney
Ooh.
and it literally knocked it out of place. So I had to get a whole special surgery to get my one of my kidneys stapled to my back. Right? Nobody wants to know this, but anyway, here we go. So I had to slowly in my adult life limit my drinking because my right kidney just would hurt. It didn't respond well to alcohol.
Oh.
And so in my adult life, I've become a cheap date because my wife gives me a half a glass of wine and then I'm like, the world is lovely and I'm fine. And so if you suddenly throw, I think I ended up doing 4 straight shots of tequila and then 2 more in the margarita. So 6 shots of tequila.
Oh.
And oh boy, my body was not prepared for that the next day. Anyway, so patrons can look out for the Drunk Comic Lab, which we record every time we get to 100 5-star ratings on iTunes. That's going to be going up, I think, this week, right, Brad?
Yeah, I'll probably be working on that through the week, and we were kind of teasing about Sober Editing Lab and everything. I going back over my mind as long as I remember things correctly. There's one I named a restaurant and then remembered a story that was maybe factually incorrect. So I'll probably take the name of the restaurant out so I don't end up maligning them. But other than that, I think you guys are going to get the full 2 hours. There's not a whole lot that I think needs to be taken out.
Oh God, I don't remember big chunks of the conversation. So I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you as a friend to edit that one because God knows what's in there. It's just me. It's just me vocally holding you by the shoulders, going, "Brad, I love you. I love you like a brother."
No, actually, I mean, what they're going to hear is 2 guys getting sloppy sentimental over their wives at one point.
Oh, I do remember that. I remember we were like, "My wife is the best. I love her so much."
But no, I think it's going to be. I think and definitely we are not putting this out to the public. This is, if you want to listen to this, this is going to be a Patreon exclusive.
Now we didn't shit talk anybody in the industry, did we? Do you remember?
No, I don't think we talked about anybody but ourselves, really.
I remember talking about interacting with Watterson and Jim Davis. I have a vague memory of that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But that was all positives. And I remember getting sentimental over our wives. I do remember that. Oh, I remember we talked about how we met and what you looked like when I first met you. I remember that.
Yeah, that stuck with me. I had no ideas that my glasses didn't fit my shape of my face.
Oh, I still feel bad about that. The first 4 sets of glasses that I own never were right for my face. So
I know.
It takes a wife coming into your life going, hey, you know what, champ? Maybe don't buy those glasses. Maybe buy these glasses.
Maybe. Oh, and those glasses that I had first when you met me, I bought the exact same frames like year after year after year when I had new prescriptions. I just had I'm like, I know the serial number because I thought they were great. I had the serial number. I didn't get forced out of those until the company literally stopped making them. And I'm like, oh, now I've got to make a decision. I don't like this at all.
And here's the backstory. They went out of business because the frames were so ugly, no one was buying them, except Brad Geiger, again and again. And they're like, we need to get Brad buying glasses more frequently.
They're like, well, we got to throw this guy a bone. The only way we're going to shake him is just stop making these damn things.
Anyway, so that'll be going up at patreon.com/ComicLab probably this week, everybody. And thank you all once again for getting us all to 100. We're now, I think, at 130 5-star ratings, but thank you for getting us to the first 100 5-star ratings on iTunes. We really, really appreciate that. And on that note, we should probably say, Bradley, hi, everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about making comics.
And making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, editor of webcomics.com and cartoonist of Evil Inc.
And I'm Dave Kellett, his hungover friend, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon, and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's hour of comics advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So, Dave, now that your liver is a little bit back in shape, do you want to tackle some $5 questions?
Let's do it. All right. So I've got a question for you, Brad.
Yes.
And this one I think it's a big ticket item. So it's gonna get meaty. So Bradley J. Geiger, what motivates the two of you to keep making comics year after year?
Oh, well, that's an easy one. I've got a 12-year-old son and a 15-year-old son. And at this point in their lives, like to the point that they've matured, they've really gotten used to eating and having clothes. And they like that thing that's been happening where they flip like a switch on the wall and the light goes on.
Sure. Yeah, that's been a fun update. Yeah.
No, I to be honest with you, that is at the point that I'm at now. That really is my motivation. Is like I need to pay the mortgage, And when you're sitting down and the ideas aren't coming as freely as maybe they do sometimes, or you're just really stuck and you're not feeling it. That's a terrific motivator. Charles Schulz famously always said that writer's block is for amateurs. And I always kind of believe that because when you are doing this at the professional level, you really can't have writer's block. You got to come up with something. And so that's always been my motivator. It's like, listen, dummy, you got to sit down and do something or else, you've come too far to get stymied just because you're not feeling it this week. And what I find when I'm in that brain mode is that anything I do to put pencil to paper does get me started. The thing that hangs you up is that you don't have the courage to put that pencil to the paper. But once you do start moving, inertia takes over and you come up with something. But no, at this point, it's a matter of professionalism. For me, it's a matter of paying the bills and being a professional cartoonist like I wanted to be since I was a little kid. Now, am I taking that question in a direction that he didn't intend, Dave? What's your motivation?
Well, I think part of now I want to give you more credit than you gave yourself because you took the word motivation and I think a little bit substituted necessity into it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you took it as well. I got to pay the bills and the kids like to eat, and this is what I always. But the truth is, Brad, I know you and I know your skill set, and you could have been 10 different things in this life, but you chose to be a cartoonist because I think, like me, cartooning is this amazing blend of writing and art and showmanship and performative aspects of our personality, and being able to make a mark on the world and to be able to do it somewhat safely with a version of anonymity. And I think you, like me, genuinely love this art form above any other. I mean, you host a site specifically talking about webcomics.com, talking about the craft and the business of the art. You have written 3 how-to books now about the craft and the making of the art. You have been in documentaries. You've done a billion podcasts talking about comics. This is an art form you love. It's not just necessity at this point.
That's true. That's true. This is something that I am a little bit obsessed about at this point, especially when you listen to all that stuff listed there. Oh, yeah. And one thing I will hopefully have another project to add to that list, maybe by this fall, just as a little teaser. But no, this is something comics is something I'm fascinated by. It really is. If I wasn't doing comics in one way, I would be finding a way to do this same kind of expression maybe one of 5 or 6 different other ways.
Right, right. And so for me, the motivation is, are there days where there's the ideas come slower or the hand moves more like molasses? Absolutely. But 99% of the time, I wake up wanting to be a cartoonist and wanting to make cartoons because I genuinely love the craft and I love this art form and I love what it lets me be, both as an independent artist and in terms of a voice into a wider world, and the way that I get to be director, producer, actor, lighting designer, costume designer. I can make entire movies in my head and express them onto a page with a budget of a $3 pencil.
Yeah.
And there's no, I mean, novelists get to do it, but in a way, even novelists don't get to have that unique joy of showing you what they mean. They have to describe it for paragraphs at a time, whereas we can do it with a few pen strokes, what takes a novelist paragraphs. And so for me, I just legit love the art form. I love it. I love to do it. And I want to do it until I die. Will I do the same titles until I die? Probably not. I've done Sheldon for 20 years now, since 98. And I used to think, Brad, if you were to pull me aside around 2000 or so, or 2010, I would be like, oh yeah, Sheldon's going to go till I'm dead. I don't say that anymore, but I will say that I will be a cartoonist until I'm dead. And so the motivation for me is the self-identity and joy of creating that art in that specific craft and art form. And I love it. But like you, there are days where the ideas come slower or the pen moves like molasses, or I don't want to do anything, never mind cartooning. And so for those days, the motivation is, bills, gotta make payroll this month, all the sort of different things that drive you. But yeah, I still get excited about cartooning. I still love the physical act of cartooning. It brings me peace to be drawing. So yeah, I think as far as a summary answer, the best part, the best cap I can put on it is that I feel like I am at my best when I'm cartooning.
No, I totally get that. And you're always chasing that dragon of that one cartoon or that one comic page or strip that just falls into place perfectly. You know what I mean? The lettering was right, the sound effects, the gestures, and it doesn't happen on every one, but every now and again you put one out that you're just really, really proud of, and then you chase that dragon for the next several things you work on.
Yeah, and there's also the joy of, and it doesn't matter what level you're at, but there's a joy of when you're getting better and something pops into your mind, an idea, and you know that you can express it on the page.
Mm-hmm.
There's a joy in that and a satisfaction in that. And the longer you cartoon, the more often and more intense those joys come of like, oh yeah, I need to draw a Valkyrie riding a giant 40-foot falcon and attacking the Roman legions, and you're like,
yeah,
I can draw that now if I had to,
I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's satisfaction in that. And I always like to compare it to musicians because I have no musical talent, but I can imagine when the joy of a guitarist who hears a lick and goes, oh yeah, I could play that. I could recreate exactly what they're doing right now. And there's got to be a joy in that. And that's a version of what we have after all the 10,000 hours we've put in.
Yeah, that's what we've got for ourselves. That's what we got to show for our time.
That's all I got in this world, Brad.
As W.C. Fields used to say, it's a sign of a misspent childhood. Well, listen, Dave, before we go on to the next question, we should probably take a second to thank our sponsor.
Oh, let's do it. Absolutely.
Yeah, because this week's Comic Lab is being brought to you by the Deimos Chronicles. In a world where humans are endangered and live amongst mythological beasts, the Deimos Chronicles Advent Light follows the story of a young monk who receives a prophecy from the gods of his world and must travel between realms to learn its truth before tensions rise and war seals humanity's fate. You guys can go check this comic out at thedeimoschronicles.co. So thank you very much to the Deimos Chronicles for sponsoring this week's show. And if you would like to be a Comic Lab sponsor, you can become a Patreon backer at the $50 per month level. Once that pledge clears, we will be reading about your comic in the following month. So what do we got for another question here, Dave?
Well, this will be a quick one, but it's one that we've had on the docket for a while, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. So it says, I'm considering driving up to the Toronto Comics Arts Festival this year as an attendee only, and are wondering what your thoughts are about the event. What's the tone? What can I expect? Haven't been to any major comic conventions in the past. And since TCAF is coming up, I believe it's within a day or two of this show airing.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be worth tackling that one because there are a lot of folks in and around Toronto or drivable to Toronto that should go check out this show. So, Brad, how many times have you been to TCAF personally?
I have never been to TCAF.
Oh, well, then I will take.
Yeah, take this one because I can tell you that I know that it has a good reputation, but I don't have any firsthand experience.
So I think I have been to 3, possibly 4 TCAFs. They are in Toronto, held primarily, although now it's going into satellite locations, held primarily at the Toronto Public Library and underwritten and funded in huge part by both the City of Toronto, the Arts Councils in Toronto, and I think also the larger county and province level. And it's a wonderful show. There are artists, genuinely artists from all over the world that have been flown in to exhibit at the show. A lot of manga and anime artists come in. A lot of artists from France and Belgium. So you get the Franco-Belgian tradition, you get the Japanese tradition. There are a ton of Canadian artists, as you would expect. And a huge cabal of American cartoonists as well. A cable of cartoonists is like Deadpool. I'm not sure what I was going with. Anyway, it's held across 3 different floors of this beautiful, airy Toronto Public Library. And it's like no other comic show that you've been to in the sense that you can walk in for free. There's no tickets. There's no purchases that need to be made. So what happens is you get a lot of families, you get a lot of casual and curious people coming in going, what's this thing? And then walking out having spent $30 worth of comics because there was no entry fee, and you're walking around and you're looking at all these beautiful art and books, and eventually you find something that you like. And so I find that it's very easy sales at TCAF because of the lack of ticket price, and also the ability to just walk right in as a family that morning. You know how lovely that is as a dad when you wake up on a Saturday morning and you go, "Hey, anybody want to go to this event downtown?" And you all pile the car or metro and you drive down, and it's kind of that thing. And the mood is delightful. There's a lot of meetups after the show at the surrounding pubs and bars in Toronto. And there's also an increasing number of fantastic panels at satellite events, both in the library and in the surrounding hotels. And again, if you're in Toronto or around it within a 100-mile radius, I absolutely 100% recommend you go. It's delightful.
Yeah.
And so for this first-time attendee, I think you should set your expectations to delight. I think that it's like setting your phaser. You're gonna be happy with how the show is run. Christopher Butcher does a fantastic job running the show, and I can't recommend it enough. Now, as far as exhibiting, I don't know that I would recommend. We've talked about this before. I don't know that I recommend flying in if you're American or driving in, unless you're right on the border. But if you are Canadian, oh my goodness, there is zero regrets about getting to Toronto and exhibiting at that show. It is amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's go on to our next question. This was sent in by a $5 level patron. And we're going to get in. I'm going to warn you right up front, Dave. We're going to get into the weeds a little bit on this because it gets a little complicated. But I promise you, I think it's going to be a simple answer and something that's going to have a lot of use for a lot of people doing Patreon. All right. So don't get frustrated when I start going a lot into numbers. Okay.
Okay.
So this person says, I've been doing not safe for work pinup art on my Patreon for a while. I charge $10 a month for 2 illustrations with the goal of going weekly. I'm considering changing that $10 to $5 to see if I can get more backers. So he's got an NSFW level. It's $10, which I think is pretty good. And he is saying he's not getting enough patrons and he wonders what to do. So Brad,
before you go into the answer, can I ask for clarity?
Yeah.
this mean that he or she, I didn't
Yeah.
catch, they have a normal Patreon level, like a $1, $2, $5 level,
Mm-hmm.
that gets you just the ability to support the regular comic. But they're saying that in addition to that, there's not suitable for work sketches that are shared only at the $10 level. Do I have that right?
Not well, yeah. You're actually you are asking the follow-up questions that I asked this person immediately. Because
Oh,
I
okay,
wanted
okay,
to
great.
know where this person was going with this. And they're doing things, in my opinion, exactly the way I would prescribe. So this person is already doing a safe for work sketch level at $1 a month, a weekly exclusive safe for work comic at $3 a month, and then the twice a month not safe for work pinups at $10 a month. So this person's already doing exclusive comics and doing them at several different levels for his patrons. And he's not getting a lot of traction. And so the question is, he wants to go down with his price. He wants to reduce the price, but he's worried about, he thinks that that might devalue the people who are already pledging at $10. And so he wrote back and said, well, I was thinking about doing a second not safe for work comic and either replacing the pinups at $10 a month or pushing the pinups down to $5 a month and adding the comic at $10 a month. And then, of course, the third option was to leave the pinups alone and add the new comic at the pledge level. This is where I said, this is where we go into the weeds. It's going to get really clear, though, in a second. Here's what you do. The problem is you don't have enough patrons. They're not biting on what you've got. And the actual problem is 2 not safe for work pinups a month at $10 isn't enough for a $10 pledge, unless those are amazing pinups. And I haven't looked at the pinups, so I'm not making a value judgment on your art. But unless those are outstanding pinups, 2 for $10 a month is not enough. So the last, I would not suggest you go down with your price, especially if what I'm hearing is you've got the ability to add content. So if you've got the idea of doing a not safe for work comic, you add that to the $10 level and make that $10 level even more attractive than it is right now. Okay. And if you don't have a lot in that $1 a month safe for work sketches, you could curtail that because let's face it, as we've said on this show before, $1 a month actually should be $2 a month. And it should, that level, I don't even know that I would offer a whole lot of actual rewards at that level. That's just for people who like what you're doing publicly and want to support it. So if you remove rewards from a $1 and $2 level and just make it that's your tip jar level, I think that's just fine. And take that time that you're saving, put it into that $10 level where you know you're going to get traction once you add enough content to make that a justifiable purchase for people. And I think you're going to do a lot better. What do you think, Dave?
Well, I think the idea of making the lower levels just the general audience, more tip jar level, is a smart move because,
Yeah.
frankly, when you were reading off the price list, as granted, I'm not a fan or a super fan or even aware of this audience that we're talking about, but when you started saying, this is what I heard. Now, at the $1 level, you're going to get a sketch. At the $5 level, an exclusive sketch. At the $6 level, an exclusive sketch plus an L-shaped pipe that you can insert into your plumbing. And then at the $7.50 level, you're going to get a half a shoe. And then and my mind literally started to blank out because I was like, I don't even know what I'm hearing anymore. And that's not a critique on you. It's that old thing of when there's too many options,
Yes.
people start to fade out. And one of the reasons that I think In-N-Out or that hot dog stand that's famous in Seattle or White Castle in the Midwest do so well is they famously keep their menus really simple. Oh, do you want fries? Great. That's it. That's all we have. Do you want a shake? Great. That's it. That's all we have. Do you want a burger? Fine. There's one type of burger. And when you keep it simple, you actually find people are more apt to make a choice, more apt to make a quick choice, and more apt to be happy with their choice because have you ever been to a Best Buy and you have to buy a type of electronics and you're like, well, there's 40 different kinds of receivers that I could buy. Oh, how fun is the next hour as I try to second guess myself? I'm really
and then you're
excited.
trying to compare them, and they don't have comparisons that are across the board. One of them has this; it's got an LPI on it. The next one's got a PPI, and you're trying to do conversion between LPI and PPI. And meanwhile, you just want to watch, Sanford and Son and be happy for a half an hour.
Wait, hold on. Who in the last 20 years has wanted to watch Sanford and Son and be happy?
I love Red Fox.
You are the oldest man alive.
Besides, listen, if you can listen to that bass harmonica theme song and not get happy, I don't know what's the matter with you. That was an amazing theme song.
No, that theme song was amazing. I love that your cultural touchstones are all from 35 years ago. That's delightful. Like I'm talking about like, hey, Best Buy, too many choices. You're immediately like, I got to tell you, your show of shows with Sid Caesar. That one.
That Imogene Coca, she sends me.
God bless America. So anyway, I do think though that there is wisdom in what Brad said, which is simplicity in and putting your emphasis where you really want to drive people to be is another way of saying what Brad was saying, which is when you have clarity, when you have simplicity in your pricing, then you can really focus on saying, sure, you can pledge at the $1, $2, $5 level, but at the $10 level, see, like your sentences, imagine you're pitching it at a comic convention. There's less sentences to get you to say at the $10 level, you get that,
Yeah.
There's not a paragraph of lead up of like, well, at the $4.50 level, you get a half a sandwich and 2 chips and and you're like, oh boy, what's happening? So all that to say, I think simplicity and I think keep the level, but produce more. Keep the $10 level, but produce more. To Brad's suggestion.
Yeah, you do not want a whole lot of levels, and you want it really clear that, in other words, to have 2 levels that have not safe for work rewards is a really bad idea. You want to have one level. This is for ebooks and collections. This is a level for NSFW. This is a level, and if you're not doing NSFW, let's say this is a reward for pinups and desktop backgrounds. You want to have kind of clear delineations, and you don't want there to be a lot of overlap between the two. You know what I mean? Because you want these decisions to be very easy for your backers to make. And the more stuff you throw in there and the more complicated it is, the more it's going to read like an IRS directional,
And what's funny? I say this with humility because I think on my Drive Patreon, I have too many levels myself. So I myself might need to revisit Brad's advice right now and change my own thing. So,
and listen, that's not a big deal. Changing your Patreon reward levels is not the end of the world. You do want to handle it correctly. You want to give your existing patrons time to change their pledges if the change that you make is something that they're not interested in. You want to give them time to do that. But if you give them adequate time and explain what you're doing and why you're doing it, don't be afraid for a second to change that Patreon reward level and to reconfigure what you've got there. The last thing you want to do is stay with a mistake just because you're scared of changing the status quo.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. That's sort of been a hallmark of our career is that don't be afraid to shake whatever foundational thing you've been holding dear for years because it may not be working anymore. And I think that's great advice. Well, on that note, let's jump into the next question and see what other foundational advice we can shake off.
All right. Here's one that I think, man, this has something that a lot of people can relate to. I've been producing my current comic for 6 years. Over the past several months, I have found myself thinking about developing new projects. Any tips on how to go about exploring new ideas while maintaining your current project? Now, here's another one where I has to follow up. I asked this person, how much money are you making on your comic that you've been working on for 6 years? And I said, you don't have to give me a dollar figure. Is it Zero, is it pizza money? Is it mortgage money? Is it investment money? Give me a range on what this thing is. And this person wrote back that this person is currently making no money from this comic. So, with that in mind, Dave, what advice would you give this person?
The idea that they're making no money from a comic of 6 years, which, by the way, this can be a turning point. Somewhere in the 5 to 8 year range can be a turning point for a comic. I would say, in that you can suddenly find that your money numbers are increasing. But with that caveat, you should at this point have started to already make some money, I would imagine, from it. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit concerning. But if there is no current money and no dependency from this strip, and by that I mean, like, to Brad's joking point at the beginning of this podcast, there's no one whose meal requires you to have produced X amount of Comic One this week. There's no mortgage that needs to be paid from the income of Comic One. Well, then there is no limiter to you saying, "Oh, I would also like to work on Comic Two." Right. I might have said that in a more complicated way. Basically, if you're not income dependent on Comic One, if that's not the driver for your current financial needs, then there's nothing stopping you from subbing out 1 day a week or 2 days a week of what you're currently doing for Comic One and doing Comic Two. The other way you could look at this is what I did with Drive, which is I had been at that point producing Sheldon for 11 years. And I said, I want to try a new science fiction strip. This is totally different than what I did for Sheldon. And because I found joy in it and because it felt like dessert, what I did was I kept producing Sheldon, but then on Saturdays as extra work, I would produce Drive because it felt like dessert. It felt like a roller coaster of joy and new experiences, and I was happy to do it even on the weekend. And so I introduced Drive on Sheldon for the first six months, and I think I marketed it as a Saturday sci-fi storyline because I like the alliteration of the S's there. And so a bunch of Sheldon readers got acclimatized to it and knew that it was there. And it also, in a very low-cost way to me, introduced them to Drive and got them ready for when I said 6 months in, okay, now Drive has a website. So if you've been enjoying it for the last 6 months, go over here and read it. And now it has a permanent home and archives and all that sort of thing. And so for me, doing it on Saturdays with the energy and joy that I had for it on my own extra personal time was the way that I launched that. But you can also take away from the time, especially if it's not an income-bearing comic strip. Say, you know what, instead of working on Comic One on Fridays, I'm going to work on Comic Two. So, Brad, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this one?
I agree with everything you said. In other words, if you're making money, then yes, you have to be careful. And you can see through a lot of different examples, people doing that. Table Titans, that Scott Kurtz did, was originally a PvP storyline. But he brought it into PvP, worked it out, introduced it. He used that as an excuse to work on this new project and to see what his existing audience were going to do in terms of a reaction. And once he kind of felt the water out, then he went full bore and brought Table Titans to its own website and split his time between the two. The Evil Inc. was a outshooting of Greystone Inn. You know, it was a Greystone Inn storyline. But here's the deal. After 6 years, you're not making a significant amount of money. I would say that you got a enviable position. You've got all kinds of flexibility. I would go full stop on that comic and put it on hiatus, put a note up to your existing readers. I'm going to work on this other thing for a little while. Go full stop and put your full energy, not try to split energy, because what Dave's saying is, in terms of doing that Saturday science fiction deal, that's great. And he was in a position where he needed to do that. But if this isn't your full-time gig, if this isn't something, if you're like most web cartoonists that we talk to, and if you're in a place that Dave and I were maybe 10 and 15 years ago, where it's really difficult to find time on your comic because you've got a day job and spouse and family and all this other kind of commitment, you may not be able to split your time between the two. You're in a good spot, though. You can go full stop on this comic. That's a good thing. That's a positive thing. And give your full attention to this other project. Don't be caught up in that gambler's mentality that web cartoonists get trapped up in, where they say, okay, it's been 6 years, but next year's the year it's going to hit. The big break is just around the corner. No, you pretty much know after 6 years that you're in for a long climb. All right. And that's not anything to be ashamed of. You're talking to somebody who had a long climb. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's something noble about putting the time in. But if you're in this position, I would say go full stop, work on this other thing, and see what the reaction is. See what people think. This might be the thing that, you know how we said a couple shows ago that every not so great project leads you one step closer to the great project? This might be what your 6 years was leading you to. Don't miss out on your opportunity to do that other thing. And final point, and this is something I really want you to get into, the Zen mindset of internet readership. You think, if you're like most of us, you think there's a finite number of readers for your strip. And that if you stop this 6-year comic, you're going to lose your readers and you're going to be working from a deficit. Nothing could be further from the truth. There is a nigh infinite amount of webcomics readers out there. And anybody that you're going to lose by going on hiatus, you've got a whole bunch of people waiting in line to take their place. All you got to do is do good comics. And if this little hiatus and working on something else for a while brings you to a point where you're charged up again and doing good comics, you're going to bring back those readers in no time because you're doing good comics. Don't get wrapped up in this mentality that there's only a finite number of readers and that if you lose those people that you've gained over 6 years, you're never going to get them back. Nothing could be further from the truth. You start posting good comics, you're going to regain all those people that you might have lost and much, much more. So take the Zen approach. Do what it takes for you to do good comics. If that means putting this thing on hiatus and working on something else for a while, then do that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because now I'm imagining the flip side of that, which is someone who every 6 months goes, I'm going to put this thing on hiatus too. I'm going to try comic number 5. All right, I'm going to put that one on hiatus and try comic number 6.
In fact, I think that would be awesome. And that goes back to the idea of branding the creator instead of the project. If you were a cartoonist that did 6-month projects and kept flipping it up, I would love to see that. In fact, I'd love to see that way more than I love to see somebody who is still at 43 years old, still trying to make that comic from high school work.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you're right because it's funny. I was being kind of denigrating of it, but I guess that's kind of what I did with that Anatomy of Animals book that I did, which is I basically took 6 months within Sheldon and said, hey, everybody, guess what? Now Sheldon's going to be me doing animal comics for 6 months while I do this book that I want to do.
And you know what? Your readers loved it because they're not Sheldon readers. They're Dave Kellett readers.
Yeah, and if you liked the humor of Sheldon, you probably liked the. I mean, were there holdouts? Absolutely, but did it also get new people that had never tried Sheldon before? Absolutely. So,
and how did that Kickstarter go for Anatomy of Animals?
I don't remember, but I think it was like 40 to 55, something like that.
It succeeded over 100% funding. I remember that. Right, you got more than what you asked for. Went way over. People supported it huge, and you're going to be selling this book for years to come.
Yeah, and it was also fun because I needed a palate cleanser from Sheldon after 20 years, and so basically, I just followed my joy a little bit on that. I followed my bliss, and a really fun, unique, different project resulted from it. And like Brad said, did I lose anybody? Maybe, but guess what? There's a bunch of new people to supplement, as he said, the near infinite number of people that are out there waiting to check out things.
There's more people waiting to come aboard where those other people made room for. And
just to clarify my earlier decision with Drive, the reason why I did that one on Saturday while maintaining the 5-day-a-week Sheldon thing in 2009 was I'm remembering back to that year.
Yeah.
My wife was not working that year, and I had just quit Mattel a year and a half beforehand. So I had to keep doing Sheldon 5 days a week because that was making the bills. And so Drive as a Saturday thing was my reward to myself for a new project that I wanted to try out.
I didn't realize Drive went all the way back to your Mattel days. Because in my mind, you've been gone from
Oh, no, it
Mattel.
didn't go to my Mattel. I quit Mattel in 2007, and Drive started, I think, in 2009.
Oh, okay, but pretty darn close.
Yeah, it went farther back than you think. And what happened with Drive was, I mean, listen to me. Now I'm realizing that I've shifted my bliss every 6 months. I started Drive, and then Fred and I said, "Hey, you want to make a documentary about comics?" And so I don't know if you remember this, Brad. I kind of put Drive on hiatus while I made a full length documentary film.
Yeah.
And to Brad's advice, nobody really got hurt. Drive's doing fine. And I followed my bliss, and I made a great film. And then I came back and started back up on Drive again. And
I'm telling you, it's really something I've become passionate about. This whole idea of marketing yourself as a creator instead of marketing and promoting this feature that you make, because when you see yourself not as the person, when you see the point is not No Shoes for Tuesday, the daily comic, and the point is you, this person that's making comics, then you free yourself up to do whatever comes down the line that you're most excited about. And when you're doing work that you're excited about, you're doing good comics and you're going to get followers.
Yeah, and that the joy comes through the work. Yeah. When you're doing the thing that you want to be doing. If it becomes like digging a ditch, it's going to read like someone's digging a ditch.
Right. And you get caught up like this person over here. 6 years he's been doing his comic. He or she. I keep saying he, but I got to get in the habit of saying they because I don't want to presuppose something. But listen, this person's been doing it for 6 years. All right, it's enough. Put it on hiatus. You're not going to hurt yourself. But you might be hurting yourself by not going to that next thing that might be something that really hits with somebody.
Yeah, or even if you want to presuppose that they're still finding joy with that first comic, then just split your time. Take whatever 50% of the time you were spending on it and spend it on comic B, and that's fine too. So there's a lot of good options, but basically Brad's advice is solid, which is if your heart is telling you that it wants to try a new project, then find a way to include that project into your life because there are benefits to it.
Absolutely.
As it happened with Brad and has happened with me on Stripped and Drive and Anatomy of Animals and different other projects, when you follow your bliss, then great things happen. And sometimes very often when you go back to the other project, you've been percolating in the back of your subconscious whole different ways to tackle that comic and that project. And in general, you've gained a whole new bunch of skill sets. And so you are better able to jump in on that story or that comic or that project than you were when you put it on hiatus. So
yeah,
there's a lot of good that can come of it too.
And the last little thing to think about there that is kind of materializing behind my back of my head there is stop making fear-based decisions and start making excitement and love-based decisions, right? The whole thing here is, what's going to happen if I stop doing this comic? That's fear-based. Don't give in to fear-based decisions. The real issue is, I want to do this other thing. Say yes to that, right? And find out what happens. Fear-based decision-making is always going to leave you being stagnant because at the end of the day, you're going to follow that fear so much that you end up deciding that the best thing to do is nothing. Well, the best thing to do is seldom nothing. The best thing to do is the thing that really gets you excited to do it. And you're never going to get there making fear-based decisions. And that goes for this person, and that goes for everybody listening to this podcast, because we all, including me, because we all make fear-based decisions. And
God, more than a few have I made that are fear-based decisions.
Yeah. Oh, I'm telling you, Dave, that last Kickstarter I did, that goal number changed so many times, and based on fear. Right? What am I going to be able to make? What do I want to offer? What's what are all these? It changed 10 minutes before I hit that button to make it go live. And by the way, I wished I had never done that. That was fear-based and it was ridiculous. And I've been doing this for a long time. I have no excuse to be making fear-based decisions. But there it was, And time again, when you find yourself making fear-based decisions, step out of yourself and say, snap out of it. Make an excitement-based decision instead. And if you fall on your face, if you fall on your face or your place, you fall on your place.
That's right. But maybe you've brought a little joy to the world by saying fall on your place. So
That's right. Well, listen, Dave, I got one. Before we run out of time, I got to ask you whether you deal with this. This is just a topic. This isn't sent in by anybody. Because we're both full timers, right? And I got a feeling that even us and our friends that are doing day jobs, we all deal with this because we're cartoonists. Whenever somebody gets sick or goes on vacation or needs to go to the doctor, is it the cartoonist that has to take them because your schedule is quote unquote free?
Oh, Brad, I'm so glad you brought this up because this is the great crucible that I deal with on a week to week basis, and it's one of the few things, and it's a struggle for me and my personality because I want to be generous and loving in all those family moments where someone needs to be taken to a dentist or to a rehearsal, to a practice, or someone is sick and someone else in the family needs to cover for them. But I really struggle, and it's a humility issue and it's a reorientation of my own personality issue because I get so frustrated that if it was left up to me and my druthers, I would work 50, 60, 70 hours a week on cartooning because I love it.
Right.
But all these distracting family events come up, and because my schedule is free, like your schedule is free, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And by that I mean that we can set our own hours. It immediately becomes, hey, why don't we have the cartoonist take all these dentist trips, or the cartoonist handle everybody that's sick, or this or that. And I actually always look to you on this one because your mind frame is so much better, and you are so better oriented in how to approach this with joy rather than regret or begrudgingly. And so I would actually like to hear you elucidate on it because I think you've said it to me 1,000 times, and it's for the benefit of everyone out there. I would like to hear how you orient yourself for all those family moments as a cartoonist with the quote unquote free schedule.
Well, listen, you really built me up there, but there are times when I'm taking a kid to a dentist appointment or a doctor's appointment where I'm kind of grinding my teeth because I'm in the moment. And I'm like, I need to get this thing done. I want to work on this thing because it's really satisfying and I'm in the zone. There's nothing worse than being taken out of the zone. And that happens. I'm guilty of that often. But for me, it's kind of like that voice in my head goes off and it says, wait a minute, doofus. This is the whole reason you became a cartoonist, was to be present in your son's lives, is to be that dad who could take and chaperone a field trip, right? That could do stuff like that and be the fun dad that some of the other people that have a lot stricter schedules just can't do.
Right.
And sometimes I got to give myself that attitude adjustment. That this is what it was all about. This was why I worked at night at the newspaper and then got up in the morning and worked on the comic to be able to build my business to the point where I could do this. And now that you're doing it, don't complain about it. You know, and listen, if you're like me and you kind of find yourself grinding your teeth from time to time, don't beat yourself up too bad. You're only human. It's natural to be excited about what you're doing and to be like, nobody looks forward to taking a kid to the dentist, right? And I've got the second one, has gotten braces already, and that means repeated trips to the orthodontist to get them adjusted and this and that but living in Philadelphia I love it so much, but this dentist has his office downtown. Finding parking is a trial, and then a lot of times, if I do find parking nearby, it's at a parking garage that's like $25 to $40, depending on how long I'm there. It's like $25 for 45 minutes. But God bless that guy. He's let me go. Like I've come in like 26 minutes or I'm sorry, 46 minutes or 47 minutes. And he punched something in there to make it so that I only paid the 45-minute rate. But still, that's a lot of money just to park your damn car. And you get all caught up in that stuff, right? I'm getting caught up in it right now. I'm already shaking, thinking about having to deal with parking.
I'm over here going, blood pressure, Brad, blood pressure.
But listen, that's why we chose this life. That's why we did what we're doing to get to this point. And if you're smart, you take your tablet with you, you take your sketchbook, you use that time while you're sitting there in the waiting room, and you make productive use of that time, and you'll find that to be honest with you, the rewards well outweigh the trials, right?
Yeah.
You'll find every now and again that the universe blesses you with a fantastic idea sitting there in the waiting room that you maybe wouldn't have gotten.
No, you are 100% correct that's the case.
And you'll find as much as it was painful to get taken out of the zone, you get right back into that zone. It just doesn't feel like if I wish I could be more involved so I didn't feel that initial negative feeling. But that's when it's helpful to have that little voice in the back of your mind saying, wait a minute, dummy, this is why you did this. This is the whole point.
No, you are 100% correct. It's an interesting failing on, I don't know, failing is not the right word. It's an interesting struggle, both with my logical and emotional side of my brain, is that there is a part of me that if I had my druthers, I wouldn't sleep and I wouldn't eat and I would just produce 4 books a year. Like if I could do that. And it's not a small part of my personality. If I could give up eating and sleeping and have no detriment to my body, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds great. I would love to do that. And then the other side of me goes, what is it? What are you, an idiot? What are you, an automaton? That's not a life. That's not living.
Wait a minute. I like eating.
And also the very strong, thank you, Brad. There's also the very strong awareness, like, listen, you don't want to become the living embodiment of the lyrics to Cats in a Cradle. You don't want to. You have to balance that out, and the joy and the love and the satisfaction and the completeness that comes with all those family moments. So it's a balancing act of being the cartoonist without a boss. That's a different way to say it. That because I don't have a boss, my boss is me. I can always get permission from my boss to go take someone on a dentist appointment. Yeah. Whereas spouses and relatives and grandparents can't always say to their boss, "Hey, I need to take the afternoon off to go take my kids to the dentist." But like you said, finding the positive in that moment of, okay, I am stepping away from my cartooning, I am stepping away from work, but I'm gaining invaluable moments in my life with little ones.
And especially when they're little, we always say in our house, especially when we had toddlers, we're building the relationship with our future teenager today, because that time that you're spending when they're little is going to come back and pay enormous dividends when they are teenagers, and the stakes are much higher, and the emotions are much higher. That time you're spending with those kids when they're little, man, that comes back and pays enormous dividends later on.
Absolutely, and as you were saying, it's these are the kind of things that you can't put a price on. It's why you do what you do, and it's the reason behind even your cartooning. This is the reason why you cartoon, is to make these lives possible and happy and joy filled and loved.
Although we do need to say this: fuck that Cats in the Cradle guy. He has screwed up more dads. Talk about fear-based decision making. That Cats in the Cradle guy screwed up more dads who were just trying to go out and by the way, shame on me, screwed up more parents who were just trying to go out and do the responsible things of making a living. And sometimes that means saying, no, I can't play ball right now. Sometimes as a responsible parent, you've got to say, listen, I got to do this right now. I can't do that. And obviously, if you always let the scales fall to one side, you're going to be unbalanced. But that Cats in the Cradle guy made so many parents screwed up because they felt an enormous amount of guilt for doing responsible things. If there was one song I could erase from the American lexicon, it would be that song. That and maybe the Hokey Pokey, because I've had too many Polish weddings where I felt like a fool after being on the dance floor. Those two songs, gone.
I don't know, Brad. My boy was just like me. Brad, my boy was just like me. Who wrote that? Was that Chapin? Is that Harry Chapin?
Yeah, Harry Chapin. That
They didn't
guy.
even ever do a follow up to see if he was a real asshole dad.
Wouldn't that be delicious irony if it turns out he was like a non-existent kind of father?
It's also like 4 divorces, 16 kids. We're like, oh, okay. Cats in the Cradle makes a little more sense now. All right.
Making all these other parents feel like screw ups.
Yeah, exactly. Meantime, we're all silently crying inside as we're playing ball with our kids, being like, "I'm doing it," and Harry Chapin is over there on his 14th kid.
Oh man.
Anyway, so it's a struggle that I think is a near universal one on different levels of trying to be. It's the interesting interplay as a parent of trying to service everything in your life 100% and feeling like you're only doing 70% well on each one of them.
Yeah, and the other thing is just remember, tomorrow's another day. You're going to have another shot at this tomorrow.
Yeah.
So if you did get into that zone where you took a kid to the dentist and you were less than pleasant on your way there, don't beat yourself up over that. Tomorrow's another day. If you missed your deadline for your comic because of this or that, and you're feeling like a schlub, tomorrow's another day. And if like I said before, the beautiful thing about this thing is that if you come back tomorrow and post a great comic, your readers are going to forgive an amazing amount of missed hiatuses and missed deadlines and all this other stuff. And if you snapped at your kid yesterday and today you're like, Joey, I'm sorry I snapped at you yesterday. You'll be surprised. Kids know that parents have a bad day every now and again. Don't beat yourself up over that kind of stuff. Tomorrow is going to be better.
On my best days, what I try to do is that idea of it's sort of a Zen-like Socratic ideal. So in the moments where I say, the thing that I have to do right now in this moment is I have to drive to a dentist appointment. So, and this is my best days. So I might as well enjoy this moment of driving to a dentist appointment and make it a jokey and song-filled one and build value in it. And other times I'm like, the thing that I have to do is get the pre-press files for my book out at this moment. And so I might as well enjoy getting the pre-press files for my book out at this moment.
Right.
And the days where I think I'm least happy or feel that I failed is when I didn't align my emotional state with what needed to be done anyway. So, like if you're saying, oh, I wish I could be working on my pre-press files, but you have to go to a dentist appointment, well, then you are in some ways you're making yourself miserable because what has to be done in that moment is the dentist appointment.
You're going to be doing it anyway. You might as well have a good time doing it. You're just the only person you're torturing is yourself by letting yourself get into that negative mindset. Hey, you're going to be driving to that dentist today anyway, one way or the other. You might as well turn the music on and make the kid laugh and find the best out of it. And remember that every time you step out into the world and get dragged outside of your studio, like they have to drag me out of mine, there's all kinds of ideas and inspiration just waiting for you out there. It might be the universe doing you a favor,
Yeah, and if you have a joy-filled heart attuned towards seeing joy, you'll see those ideas waiting in that dentist waiting room, like you said. But if you're grumpy and going, then you're not gonna find that joy-filled moment of like, oh, this personality has inspired this idea, or this moment has inspired that idea. So you're right. You're 100% right. So it's basically it's another moment where we advise choosing happiness is what we're saying.
That's absolutely true though. I mean, there's so much in life that comes down to the fact that you're choosing how the entire thing is being framed, because you're deciding how you're going to think about it. That person cuts you off in traffic. You can choose to deal with that two different ways. You can lay on the horn, or you can say, well, listen, I'd rather have you out in front of me where I can keep my eye on you anyway.
Right.
So listen, oh, did you hear that? I was going to go on to more traffic tips, but I heard the guitar start, so I guess I better say that you've been listening to ComicLab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my dear friend Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and cartoonist of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And my drinking buddy and hangover pal, Dave Kellett, co-director of Stripped and cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net.
Comic Lab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/comiclab. So we'll go ahead and say that twice, patreon.com/comiclab.
And the sponsor for this month.
Ooh, yeah, we got to make sure we thank our sponsor once again. We would not want to forget that. It is the Deimos Chronicles Advent Light. In a world where humans are endangered and live amongst mythological beasts, the Deimos Chronicles Advent Light follows the story of a young monk who receives prophecy from the gods of his world and must travel between realms to learn its truth before tensions rise and war seals humanity's fates. And that Deimos Chronicles is at thedeimoschronicles.com.